Chapter 40. Ben. Ben knew where Leah was at all times, although Leah had no idea he did. She thought she was safe and sound, hidden from Ben and the decree. The rest of the world, for that matter, but, as always, Leah underestimated Ben. Overestimated her own intelligence, in fact. If she didn't focus just on herself, she wouldn't be in this situation. She lived in her own bubble, seeing only what was 3 inches in front of her. The world revolved around her and Adam, and nothing else mattered. Stupid woman. But he was always there, watching and waiting, sometimes in clear sight. He had no choice. The fact that he was watching her, and the boy, without her awareness, just proved how much she needed him to protect her. She had no idea the danger she was in. Malcolm was out for Leah's blood. Ben had no other option. He had to follow her. He couldn't allow her to be caught by someone else and brought to Malcolm. Ben would be the one to bring her in when he was ready. She and the boy. It would be he who would retrieve his wife and bring her back to the decree, but not to be judged by Malcolm. No, that would not happen. It would look too bad for Ben. His position would fall lower in the ranks of the decree, and there were many who were just more than willing to cut him down to size. John Wilder, for one. There was no way Ben was going to allow that. His primary goal was to exonerate Leah and prove her innocence in Malik's death. Despite everything, she was his wife, and he wanted her and Adam by his side. It was crucial now more than ever. His mind struggled to comprehend that Leah had slipped away from his grasp. Even harder to fathom, she'd found her way to the compound and begged to be let in, completely unaware of the severity of her situation. To Yasmin, no less. What the hell was Leah thinking? Ugh, she was so dumb. She'd just about ruined everything. But all was not lost. After Yasmin's brief outburst, Ben had easily found Leah again. It wasn't difficult. He knew his wife better than anyone. She was predictable as the time. It didn't take long to follow the breadcrumbs she'd left after her encounter with Yasmin. Not long at all, thank God. Fortunately, Ben had been correct about Adam. Leah had hidden him, crouched behind a bush, just a few feet away from her when she confronted Yasmin. But it had been too close of a call. If Ben was going to stay in his position as Malcolm's right-hand man, his top priority was getting Leah and their son into the decree and official members. He needed both. Just having Adam wouldn't be sufficient enough in Malcolm's crazy mixed-up mind. He would say Adam wasn't true blood, even though the boy was most definitely Ben's bloodline. Malcolm's distorted concept of who was pure and who wasn't was irrational. My God, Adam was born in marriage. What more did Malcolm want? The kid that he was getting out of Yasmin wasn't even his wife's child. How the hell did that make sense? But in Malcolm's mind, labeling Yasmin as the chosen one cleared everything. Screw the rules everyone else had to follow. Ben knew Malcolm was delusional 90% of the time, but he also knew the guy made shit happen, and Ben wanted that. He needed it. Power had always been his greatest turn-on. That's why he liked women like Leah. He could control them, just by giving them the slightest amount of admiration and interest. Give a starving dog a bone and it will always come back for more. Ben needed Leah and the kid with him. Time was ticking. He had to find a scapegoat for Malik's murder. All that mattered was that Malcolm believed it. Everything else was beside the point. And so here he was, watching Leah once again. Each morning, Ben would make excuses to leave for the day. Hunting trips, visits to the soldiers and Lex, but his true intention was always clear. He was checking in on Leah. Every step she took, every move she made, Ben was there, close to her, watching, his heart pounding with anticipation, just out of sight. Nothing else mattered to him in these moments. Nothing. Malcolm had no idea. It began at first when he and Malik arrived at the empty cabin. Ben knew Leah would return eventually. Despite her love for the cabin, the woman wasn't built to survive in the outdoors. Like clockwork, she did just that. Leah had no sense of creativity. She was more predictable than the weather. He watched every day as she hid inside the cabin, huddled away, afraid and terrified to let Adam out of the house. which was good, because if there had been any noise from that place, the decree soldiers would have been on them in a heartbeat, seizing them into custody. Leah killed, and maybe the boy too. He didn't like that, though. He did not like the thought of the boy being dead at all, or Leah for that matter. So he waited, knowing that they would have to leave the cabin for food, eventually. It was a massive surprise when he missed it, totally unexpected when she did just that thing, heading right to the decree compound like a sacrificial lamb. He was furious at his incompetence, angry he had allowed it to happen. He did not see that coming. Not at all. And to meet up with Yasmin, sheesh, that ended up blowing up everything. He didn't care about Yasmin finding out the truth. It was just a matter of time before she discovered it. It would have been better once all was cleared, and Leah was safe at the decree with the boy. Then Yasmin would just have accepted her place as his consort on the side. Malcolm had assured him that once the child was born, he could have his way with Yasmin, wife or no wife. Yet Ben couldn't help to notice how Malcolm avoided his gaze when saying it. Knowing Yasmin was his and not Malcolm's only escalated the surge of power. Malcolm couldn't do anything about it. It was priceless. Of course, Malcolm could want another child and, well, Ben was okay with that. He doubted Yasmin would be so willing, but he wasn't about to think about that now. What mattered was he found Leah, and he was damn well not going to let her out of his sight again. He caught up to her in the woods, close to where she'd encountered Yasmin, loaded down in a childish mashup of camping gear, dragging the boy behind her. Since then, he was one step behind her at every turn. Ben hadn't expected the group to show up from out of nowhere. No, he had not. He did not expect that at all, or that they would take in Leah and Adam, an event he hadn't planned. Ben had been trailing Leah and Adam from a distance when he saw her jump, dragging Adam with her into the bushes to hide. He stayed back, alert, his gun raised as he saw the small group of 3 emerge out of the woods. He almost shot them. Ben was just about to do it, but when he saw the taller figure jump in front of the bushes where Leah and Adam hid, Ben lowered his gun. He couldn't make out exactly what the tall man was saying, but it was clear he was using his body to shield them from the others. Shock of all shocks, not. Leah reached out her hand to the tall man, holding Adam in her arms, and she allowed the tall stranger to help her out of the bush. Ben had to fight to keep his composure. He raised his gun, finger tightened on the trigger, and aimed it at the man's head, but then thought better of it and lowered it. Perhaps this could work to his advantage. If they took her somewhere else, they would likely keep her in one location with others, making her believe they were safe. They wouldn't be out wandering alone through the forest anymore, risking starvation or running into someone who wouldn't hesitate to harm her or Adam. Ben wouldn't have to go around in circles every day following them. They would be tucked away in one place, nice and neat, where he could monitor them until he could figure out what to do next. So, he let them go and followed them to Hayden, the place led by the tall, long-haired guy who found them. The mere thought of this man stirred up intense emotions in Ben, a mixture of jealousy and anger that made him want to rip Kai apart with his bare hands, though he couldn't pinpoint the exact reason why. The boy liked him. The boy liked him a lot. Ben crouched in his usual spot once again. Even though they had such a strong military-style security system around them, no one noticed him. He sat and watched, never missing a day, for a good hour, knowing that, for now, Leah and the kid were safe. Kind of. Ben knew where they were, and if he could track them to Hayden, others could too. When the time was right, Ben planned to be that person, leading Malcolm and the decree right to the very spot he sat watching. But for now, no one needed to know. It was Ben's little secret from them all. He peered through the foliage, observing Kai and the teenage girl, who was always at his side, approaching the path. Kai's gaze lingered on Leah as she passed by him, with her head down, heading towards a figure out of view. She stopped to talk with the boy, playing in the sandbox before continuing on her way. Ben watched it all unfold from his hiding spot in the bushes. Dark emotions of jealousy and bitterness consumed Ben as he watched his son interact with Kai, with his long black hair and towering height, making his own stature small in comparison. His son laughed as he held out some toy to Kai. A familiar voice calling out to Kai interrupted Ben's seething anger. His eyes followed the sound to see a man approaching. Ben's rage, which had been bubbling inside him moments before, gave way to utter shock. It couldn't be. But it was. The man walking towards Kai seemed like a ghost, someone who had come back from the dead. It was impossible, yet there he was in front of them all. Chris on Weir. What the fuck? He covered his mouth with his hand, trying to restrain the words and his urge to burst out of his hiding spot. Chris was alive? How the hell was that possible? Malik had said he'd killed Chris back at the plant. Bragged about it even. How he made Chris bend down on his knees with his hands behind his head, execution style, shooting him point blank into the back of his skull. Laughed about it as Malik mimicked his head exploding with his hands. But there he was, Chris, with concern on his face, talking a mile a minute to Kai, who had risen from talking with the boy. What the bloody hell is going on? Malik lied. He hadn't killed Chris. So what had happened? There's no way Malik would have allowed him to go free. Malcolm was very clear with his instructions. Chris's life was to be ended. He wasn't to be trusted with good reason. The guy betrayed his entire city by switching off the power. You couldn't depend on someone who would sell out their own people. Ben paid no attention to the irony that he, too, had betrayed his own city. It was not the same. He was Decree, and that was all that mattered. Chris, on the other hand, was a weak and deceitful man, not to be trusted under any circumstances. Yet there he stood, free and standing beside the despicable Kai, Ben's son playing just inches away from his feet. This excuse of a man who tried to kill a city. How did Chris end up in Hayden? He obviously was the mastermind behind the military tactics that Ben had observed in recent weeks. How did Ben not notice Chris sooner? He didn't notice who the military trainer was because he was too preoccupied with Leah. He ignored what was right in front of his face. The betrayer within their midst. It suddenly hit Ben like a ton of bricks. Chris was a traitor. Chris was a traitor of the Decree, and somehow he'd escaped Malik. It all made sense now. Thoughts whirled around Ben's head, the ideas of how he could spin this new knowledge in his favor. Chris was the goat he was looking for, the fall guy to save Leah's reputation. Chris had every reason to kill Malik. Leah didn't. He didn't believe Chris killed Malik any more than he did Leah. The guy was too wimpy to pull something like that off. But that was beside the point. He could work with this. Bringing Chris to Malcolm alive would prove that Malik had lied, and Chris had every reason to kill him to keep that secret silent forever. It was perfect. Keeping an ever-watchful eye on his wife's whereabouts was turning out to be more beneficial than he could have imagined.